If Sanders is not there at number 3, maybe he falls to the Jets at number 7.
Yeah, and if he does, I wouldn't take him. This is not – I think that a lot of people, when they talk about Shedeur Sanders, maybe it's not really clear, like, oh, they don't want him because he's Deion's son, or it's Hollywood, or he's this. Or, I think he's a great kid. I really think he's a good young man. I think he's all ball. I'm not worried about that stuff. I just don't think he's that good. So to me, Sal, you look at this hell ride we've been on with these football teams. I think the biggest issue is that neither team has an identity, all right? Nobody knows who they are. Nobody knows what they're best at, and nobody knows really how they want to play. I think the best thing for both these teams is to pass at Sanders at 3. Even if he's there at 7, pass. Giants go defense. Jets go offensive line, build it the right way.
So here's the problem that I have with that. And I like Sanders maybe more so than you, but for me, it's more about my theory and what I think NFL teams need to do if you don't have a franchise quarterback. And unfortunately, the Jets and Giants are both in that boat where neither has a franchise quarterback. The consensus is Shedeur Sanders is the second best quarterback in the draft. That doesn't mean that the Jets have to like him second best. Maybe they like him more than they like Cam Ward. Who knows? Maybe they don't like him at all. Same thing with the Giants. Just because he's the consensus second best quarterback in the draft doesn't mean that either of those teams individually have to like him. What it does mean is if you are trying to find a franchise quarterback, he will likely be their best option when they draft. Assuming Cam Ward is off the board at number 1, Shedeur Sanders will likely be the Giants' best option at a franchise quarterback. And if he somehow falls, and I think it's likely the Giants don't take him, and if that is the case, then he likely would fall to the Jets, which is why we could have the conversation for both. If he falls to the Jets, it's very hard, in my mind, similar to what Atlanta did with Penix. It's different because the Jets don't even have a franchise quarterback. It's hard in my mind to justify passing on the potential of a franchise quarterback, whether you don't like him or not. It's hard to justify passing on a player that was ranked that high and is, by consensus, the second best quarterback in the draft.
Listen, I think there was a time where I might agree with that. I think the recent trend of the NFL, whether it's Darnold, whether it's Geno, whether it's Baker Mayfield, who knows what happens with Daniel Jones moving forward? Who knows what happens with Zach moving forward? Kirk Cousins, obviously leaving Washington, putting up big numbers with the Vikings. It's a different way to approach the quarterback market here. There was a point for basically forever where if you had a guy, you didn't let him leave at all. And now I think it's flipping, whether it's a money thing, whether it's just kind of resetting the money thing, or whatever. I think that the way teams now approach the quarterback market, I think it's changed here. And I think if this was the 80s or the 90s or even the early 2000s, I'm probably sitting here saying, if the Giants had the kind of season that some people hope that they could, 7 wins, maybe a little more competitive, they're not back in this position next year, which means they don't have access to one of the good quarterbacks next year, which means, here we go, punt on the ability to get your hands on a good quarterback. I don't see it that way. I just think that so many good quarterbacks, or at least appealing enough quarterbacks, have shaken free the last couple of years where there's just a different way to accrue talent, and I'm not taking a swing on a guy that I don't think is worth it.
All right, well, let me ask you it this way. From a Jets perspective, let's say that they pass on Shedeur Sanders. He's there. How do you envision them getting their franchise quarterback, which they're going to need eventually?
Yeah, well, I've got some hopes that Justin Fields could be good, at least, serviceable. And that's one of the reasons why I think the Jets should really look into the right tackle, Membu, who I brought a month ago. I brought him up. I didn't really know his name, how to say it, but the kid's 6'4", 325. He's always played on the right side. So I think from the Jets' perspective, now if Fields was 30, it's a different approach for me. Justin's 25, 26. You got Olu Fashanu. And if you take this kid on the right side, you've got basically 80%, if not an entire line, that's good. And then I look at, okay, how do I think Aaron Glenn's going to want to play? I think Aaron Glenn's going to be old school. I think Aaron Glenn's going to run a lot. I think that's one of the reasons why you're hearing maybe Breece Hall gets dealt. Not that I think he will, but I think they're going to utilize those 3 running backs that they have. He's already basically said that. I think they're going to try to get their hands on a tight end early. I think they're going to run Justin Fields quite a bit. And I think the way you do that is having an offensive line, much like they did did when they brought in obviously those two, Nick Mangold and DeBrickashaw Ferguson. That's when the Jets really start to take off. So I'm a believer, and I got away from this philosophy because I fell in love with the notion of the splashy receiver.
Yeah, we had this argument last year.
I still love Neighbors as a star.
No, but I'm even talking about from the Jets perspective. You wanted the tight end, I wanted the offensive lineman.
That's right. It's funny. It was almost flipped from the Giants' perspective. From the Jets, it was different. And I wanted Bowers, and we had a difference there, and I get it. I think that the New York Jets, to me, are not that far away from at least being, relax, I'm not going to say championship, at least being able to run a competitive offense and play the way you have to play to give yourself a chance to win late. But I think you do that with an O-line.
Right, but they could do, understood. I want to build the offensive line too, but if you have the chance to take a franchise quarterback, you can still do everything you're talking about, win some games with Fields and build this thing and then hand it over to somebody, to me, and maybe this is where we disagree, and I was going to ask you the question. To me, Shedeur Sanders has more upside as a franchise quarterback than Justin Fields. I think it's up for debate. I'm assuming that you think Fields has more upside as a franchise quarterback than Sanders.
No, I actually don't evaluate it that way at all. I would give you the, I'm not going to say I agree, but no, I'm not thinking that way. Like, I don't look at Fields as a 10-year Jet. I look at him as an interesting reclamation project with some good athletic tools where if you put the things around them, which I just said,
maybe they could have some success.
Squeeze a little
but
something
then
out of him.
why not take the chance on
I don't think Sanders is that good. It all comes down to that.
Well,
if I thought Shedeur Sanders was good, I'd be saying, Jets, do whatever you like. We're good enough to justify that.
Well, he wouldn't be there. If there was talk about him being better, then he wouldn't be there. And by the way, he might not be there.
Well, that's not necessarily true. A lot of guys that are mocked to go to a certain spot wind up dropping and wind up being a lot better, or vice versa. You know, they kind of overlooked and then they shoot up late and they're picked in a spot that's too early that doesn't, justify their talent base. Listen, this is an incredibly inexact science. I'm not professing to be some GM or a scout here. I've watched Sanders. I think he's okay. Again, I'm not going to bore people with what I don't think he's good at.
Right.
But what he's not good at, I think you need to be good at in the NFL. Being on time, small windows, that's the basic answer.
But you trust Glenn and Muji. We really have no choice but to now.
Blindly, I trust them,
and if they said, I would feel great that from a Jets perspective, you'd at least have the potential franchise quarterback in the waiting while you try to build this thing the right way. Now, I thought Brian Costello of the Post had an interesting point about the reason why he thinks maybe they shouldn't draft Sanders, or why they wouldn't, is because Glenn has talked about quieting the noise. Well, the last thing drafting Shedeur Sanders would do would be quieting the noise. However, forget the noise, forget all that. The most valuable thing, the most difficult thing to do in the NFL is find a franchise quarterback. Think about what Howie Roseman has done with the Eagles. When they had Carson Wentz there, coming off a MVP type year, even though they won the Super Bowl with the backup Nick Foles, they just go out there and draft Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, but they didn't take him 7, took him second round.
Understood, but still, it's a quarterback thing. And if you're looking at, if you're the Jets, so you're saying you'd be better off with a quarterback in the second or third round?
Oh, I'd much rather. I'm not saying I don't want the Jets to take a quarterback at some point, whether it's a Milburn from Bama, sure. You want to move up round 2 and round 3, yeah, go for it.
But if Sanders there's a reason why Sanders is talked about in the first round.
But that doesn't mean people are right. Like, that doesn't mean anything to me. Like, I have learned finally that, and I said this the other day kind of joking, even Mel Kiper doesn't know anything. Like, he really doesn't. Right. He's made a great living on telling us who's going where and who's got this and who doesn't have that and this team needs this. All these guys, honestly, it's empty noise. It is rhetoric that is just espoused and regurgitated over and over and over. And like zombies, we walk the plank and we take it.
But it is more...
I don't think Sanders is that good. Okay. I don't want him on the Jets.
Understood. But it is more likely that you find a quarterback in the first round, especially nowadays where everybody's trying to get the quarterback, than it is finding somebody in the second, third, or fourth round, or whatever, later rounds, and turning them into a star franchise quarterback.
Listen, the numbers would say that you're probably right, but I think that there's a massive... See, when you take a quarterback in round 2, you're not going to attach a bust label on him because the expectation... Like when the Jets took Kellen Clemens, I believe it was round 2, we're not sitting here assigning the bust tag to him like we did Zach.
How about Christian Hackenberg?
Well, I mean, listen, I'm just saying. Like, no, I get it, Sal. There's a graveyard full of quarterbacks. Oh, this guy's interesting in round 3. That failed. There's also a Hall of Fame, whether it's Joe Montana round 4, whether it's Russell Wilson round 3 or round 4. Whether it's Jalen Hurts, who's a Super Bowl champion. Oh yeah, by the way, if his team would have won the previous Super Bowl he was in, he would have been the MVP. That's how well Jalen Hurts played in that Super Bowl. So I think it depends what you're looking for. I think it depends how risk averse you are. And I think it depends, like, how married are you to the conventional board. I'm not. I don't think Sanders is a difference maker. I'm not taking him.
Also value, too. When you look at, okay, well, taking him at 3 is a bigger risk than taking him at 7. If you're at 7, you didn't think you would have a chance to get one of the top quarterbacks in the draft.
Yep.
That, to me, is a value play, and it's a risk worth taking from my perspective to try and hope. I know you personally don't like Sanders as a quarterback.
You just don't like overall, just
Yes.
not even just Sanders? Okay. So philosophically, I still don't agree.
Where do you think Jackson Dart goes, roughly?
I think he's going, I'd say somewhere between maybe 15 and 25.
So it would be a bit of a reach.
That's a guess. He could go earlier. Who knows?
Yeah, let's say Sanders was off the board somehow with the Giants or even the Jets. You don't think the Saints would potentially take Dart there? I guess my point is that...
I think they could. I think they'd be certainly intrigued to do. Yeah.
So my point is, if you want a franchise quarterback and you identify one, I know you don't like Sanders, but say you love Jackson Dart, then the Jets should be looking to take him at number 7. It doesn't, for me, need to be Sanders. I'm just going based off of the consensus that Sanders is number 2. I like a lot of things about Shedeur Sanders. I think he's going to be a pro. I think because of his father, he's not going to be overwhelmed by his situation.
I agree with that. I think it's unfair to the young man to say. I think it's the opposite. I think he's more prepared for the NFL. I don't love his skill, but I don't think he's going to be swimming here like some people think. I think that's ridiculous.
I like more athleticism myself. He's a pocket passer, more of that.
It's not that big.
But he can make some big throws. Either way, I'm taking the risk if I'm the Jets or the Giants in finding that quarterback. So if you identified, say, Jackson Dart over Shedeur Sanders,
and he's there at 7,
well,
I'm still going offensive line here. So my philosophy is going to remain what it is. Now, there are certain points, like if you've got like the 15th or the 18th pick, and now it becomes a bit of a luxury, and the Jets don't have that. If they trade into that spot, now that's a different thing. See, but again, we'll get these calls here, but philosophically, we also disagree on this. To me, let's take Sanders, literally Shedeur Sanders. All right, some people think or think that he should go number 3. Well, in the equation or the situation that he doesn't and he drops to 7, based on the hype that was built around him, in a lot of people's eyes, it's like, wow, I'm getting value. I mean, we thought he was going to go 3. Hell, we got a chance to draft him 7 or 8. Take him. No. Because if I don't think he's good enough to be the franchise quarterback at 3, I don't want him at 7.
BT and Sal on the Fan, 888-808-1019. Our friends at Town Fair Tire remind you that at Town Fair Tire, you always get the guaranteed lowest price on name brand tires from Connecticut to Maine. Nobody beats Town Fair Tire. Nobody. James is in Neptune. What's up, James?
Hi. This goes to yesterday. I almost couldn't sleep thinking about it. Kirk Cousins or Derek Carr, or would you rather have a Garrett or a Parsons on your team? It needs to be a defensive player that is Hall of Fame worthy. Then Carter or Sanders? It's the same question. You take Carter. You don't take Sanders. You can get a Sanders whenever. You can get a Kirk Cousins whenever.
Well, you're talking about from a Giants perspective?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so when have they gotten where's the franchise quarterback since Eli left?
Well, but there's no other impact.
No, but James, you can't just say you could get one whenever because you can't, and they haven't.
But we just got 2. No?
You think Russell Wilson's a franchise quarterback at this point?
No, but I'd rather have a Wilson and a Parsons and a Garrett than a Shedeur Sanders and a nobody on defense.
I would agree with that. Now, the first part, you lost me a little bit. Thanks for the call there, James. And I'm with you on that, Sal. Like, if it's so easy to find one, we'll go out and find one.
It's not. It's not It's the most difficult thing. The Commanders had a good team, good players on their team, defensive studs as well. Didn't take off until they found Jaden Daniels. It's all about the franchise quarterback.
At the end of the day, it gets to that. Like, that's the final chapter. Now, some people could say it starts with that. I don't believe it starts with that. If I come in and there's an expansion team and somehow I'm either the owner or I'm the GM, you know what I'm doing? I'm building from the guts out. I know that it's boring. Nobody wants the big 360-pound lineman on draft night trying to squeeze that hat on his head. But guess what? When you're playing on Sunday and you need the yard, you got to push back the pile, jump in the end zone, keep the sticks moving. That's the kind of guy that helps you do it. And conversely, when you've got to stop somebody, line of scrimmage, point of attack, 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, massive spot of the game, whether it's a Sam Adams type back in the day, whether it's just a star that is just a difference maker up front as a defensive lineman, those guys help you win. And if anybody knows what the Giants or the Jets' identity is, please tell me. Like, if they had identifiable identities, I might have a different approach. But because the Giants don't have one, although I do believe it's trending defensively, and I think Abdul Carter adds to that, and if and when they take him, now their identity truly becomes defensively driven. And I think the Jets are a great player on the right side. I know it sounds crazy. The Jets O-line has not been good for a long time. They've got really good players there, starting with Olu Fashanu, who looks like a star. So if I could get a guy on the right side, maybe the Jets' identity becomes the offensive line, and I'm good with that as a start with the new regime.
Understood. The Jets are in a different spot than the Giants. And also to the caller's last point, right? He said he'd rather have Myles Garrett, Parsons, than he would the quarterback. How did the Browns do last year with Myles Garrett? They were 3-14. How did the Cowboys do with Micah Parsons without Dak Prescott? They were 7-10.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm not really pushing back on that. There's other examples probably to the contrary.
The defense rests. Give me them. Look at the Eagles.
So you tell me there's no...
Look at all the top teams. There's a common theme amongst the top teams in the NFL.
You're talking championship, or you're talking competitive?
I'm talking division winners, competitive.
Can we crawl before we run?
Well,
these teams stink.
I do think it's different for the Jets at this particular point, but still, eventually, to get to the level that you want, you're going to need the franchise quarterback, which to me is worth taking a risk. Let's say if one's there at 7 that you like, as opposed to just saying, we're not ready for a quarterback right now. If you find value and you like a player, I'd rather miss on taking that quarterback than I would, I'll be passive and take an O-lineman and worry about the quarterback later.
But if the O-lineman becomes a 7, 8, 9, 10-time Pro Bowler, you still feel that way? Now, there's no guarantees when you call his name either. I get that. But
I think that there are certain times for it. Like, I wouldn't go nuts screaming the Jets need to take a quarterback right now. All I'm saying is eventually they're going to have to. And who's to say that right now, if Sanders, for example, were to fall to 7, that might not be their best opportunity? We won't know. We can look back on this in 4 or 5 years and be like, they had a chance to take Shedeur Sanders, and they didn't, and look where they are now. Desperately needing a quarterback. Say the same thing about the Giants. Look at the top teams in the NFL. You need a quarterback.
I don't dispute that to win a championship, clearly. But I'm not even thinking championship with the Jets or the Giants. I'm just not. I mean, the divisions are too good. They're too far away. Their rosters have been decimated by failed draft picks and sloppy free agent signings. I just want to, and it's the least sexy way to do it. I get it. I got to stock the cupboards with some meat and potatoes here.
More of your calls on the NFL draft. Can't wait. It's almost a week away. Tomorrow will be 1 week from the NFL draft. We'll get to that. We'll get to the Knicks coming up at 11 o'clock. But your calls next, 888-808-1019.